I just think Trump isn't really making these choices for primarily ideological reasons outside of, I know that they'll be loyal to me, and when push comes to shove, they're going to do what I want them to do. And I'm not talking about like, trade policy or whatever. I think that when, he wanted to overturn the last election and he met resistance from the Department of Justice, met resistance from military, met resistance from the Senate and his own vice president, he wanted to make sure that that would never happen again. So you put in, Gaetz at the Department of Justice. Like, Gaetz is going to do whatever Donald Trump wants him to do. You get J.D. Vance for vice president instead of Mike Pence. And part of that audition process for J.D. was making sure, like, you're going to backstop the steal and you're going to say you would have done what Mike Pence wouldn't do, period, end of story. Pete Hegseth at Department of Defense, like, very similar vibe. Like, I'm going to make sure that these major institutions that stood in my way last time are not going to stand in my way this time. And same thing with the Senate. Like, in some ways, all of these confirmations are a test of, let me put up, like in Matt Gaetz specifically, let me put up the person that you all literally hate like the most, like that you find to be like the most odious. And I'm going to force it through. And whether it's you all voting for it or me just doing it anyway, you're going to see you will not resist me this time. And this was also important with the power play that he pulled with the advise and consent process, right? Because this is an important part of the Senate's powers. They're very proud of their role in this. Like, this is a big deal for them, right? And you got John Thune now in there, who is going to be the Senate Majority Leader, who is not the pick of MAGA, not who Donald Trump wanted. He's like a Mitch McConnell type acolyte. But even with him, when Trump was like, we're going to do recess appointments and I'm going to get my picks, John Thune was right away like, yes, okay, we will do that. So a lot of these moves, yes, there are different ideologies that he likes and in this way or likes this piece or whatever. The consistent through line to me is any institution that was an obstacle to my ambitions on not really policy, but on like overturning the election. If you were an obstacle then, I'm going to make sure that those institutions are bent to my will this time. And, that's what I see primarily in these picks, because there isn't an ideological consistency between Marco Rubio and Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes.
Right?
That is literally makes no sense.
Yeah, that is even between like a Pete Hegseth and an RFK Jr., there's not ideological consistency, It's about who is going to be there in these institutions that were previously an obstacle to me being able to, do everything I wanted to do. How am I going to make sure that that doesn't stand in my way this time around? And, you've already got the Supreme Court in a lot of ways, not fully, but in many ways kind of, it's shaped by his choices that are on the court. He's likely to get at least one more Supreme Court pick. The Supreme Court has already said that he's immune for any quote unquote official acts. What exactly that means is yet to be adjudicated, but, wide bandwidth there for his own personal immunity. So I think there's going to be very little that stands in his way in terms of getting what he wants and when he wants it.
I think yes and no in terms of this. For example, it gets down to what are we actually talking about here? So for, let's say, the DEI like woke thing, right? That's an area where Pete Hegseth is going to have the total backing of the president. Let's see also in terms of, I think it really is just going to depend on a case-by-case basis, because even for what you said about recess appointments, it may be true that John Thune said, yeah, let's do recess appointments. Guess what Mitch McConnell said today? We're not doing any recess appointments. And John Thune was like, we don't have the support in the conference to do any recess appointments. Basically, they don't want to cave to the precedent because in the future, they don't want Democrats, when they have power, to do recess appointments too.
Right.
Which is funny, but it's, it does show you that they still have some authority.
But the Trump people have worked out this provision that they think that they could use where there's this technicality when if the House and the Senate are in dispute about whether or not they're adjourned and in a recess, then the president can come in and say, we're in a recess. And so that's the power that they plan to use to basically have this led from the White House, where it's like, we don't really care, John Thune and Mitch McConnell, whether you have the votes to go into recess. We're gonna do it. And maybe ultimately through the courts and blah, 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 maybe there's some pushback, but who knows? Trump's got a lot of his own judges on the bench at this point, and a Supreme Court that's quite amenable to him as well. But, they have plans in place to get even someone like a Matt Gaetz or an RFK Jr. or whoever, Tulsi, whoever you think is the most difficult to confirm, to get them through, which is why I just think that, I think that there is a concerted plan to make sure that there is no institutional obstacle to Trump doing whatever Trump wants to do. What does that mean? I don't think we really know, because it's not like we could have predicted Stop the Steal in advance.
Correct.
It's not like we could have predicted, the Black Lives Matter protests and Trump saying, hey, let's just go and shoot the protesters in the legs. Like, I don't know that we know what that's ultimately going to mean in terms of how he uses the, the powers of the government and the military and whatever. But that, to me, getting all of those roadblocks that previously irked him out of the way is the primary thrust of both the sort of policy thinking that's going into the transition and certainly into these personnel choices.
Well, I don't think there's any policy thinking going into the transition.
No, but I'm talking about, like, for example, the thing about how we could use this policy to get into recess.
Yes, yeah.
Those sorts of things. How Jeff talked about, actually you can use a national security emergency to institute all of your tariffs. Like, there is thinking about how they can basically bypass any sort of thing that was a check previously and get done whatever the hell it is that they want to get done.
I don't think that's an incorrect view of it. I think it will really come down. But first of all, Trump is a deeply capricious person who changes his mind literally constantly, and depending on the last person that he spoke to. So anybody who thinks he has some concerted grand plan or any of that, I don't think any of that is true. I do think it's correct that the picks that he has gone with are based upon personal loyalty and basically nothing else. I think that could have great, it can have a lot of pluses and minuses. In some cases, when he wants to do good things, it'll be fantastic. In some cases, whenever he wants to follow through on Stop the Steal or some other bullshit like that, it can be very detrimental to the American system. The question really will come down to what the institutional pushback within the permanent bureaucracy will look like, what Congress and its immense powers will be able to flex, and then, of course, the Supreme Court. I do think people overestimate the loyalty that the Supreme Court will give Donald Trump. Don't forget, while they did give him immunity, under the last Roberts term, they shot down numerous attempts by him to bypass the interagency process, from the census, the so-called travel, like Muslim ban, and I can go on forever. I mean, the Obamacare thing, even before that. So there are many examples of Trump trying to use this new legal authority, where this is where I think Jeff is also underestimating what the legal system and the Ninth Circuit and the way our entire appellate courts work and the wrench that they can throw in. You can theorize all day long. Joe Biden tried to do a lot of things under executive order, like this with student loan and all that other stuff. This shit gets struck down constantly. The appellate courts can come in and they can change things. So I wouldn't underestimate on the other side what the institutional checks are, although it will be much more of a loyalist administration. But I think we knew that going in. I think we also knew that going in.
I knew that going in.
Yeah, certainly, but I think other people did too.
I knew that going in. I don't know if that's what, I do think that there is a significant frustration with democracy in the public, where the idea of he's just going to be a strong man and come in and his I'm going to be a dictator on day one. For some people that was something they had to overcome to vote for him, and for some people that was a feature, not a bug. Yeah. That was an affirmative part of the pitch of hey, democracy, this doesn't seem so great. Let's just get someone in there who's gonna do whatever he wants to do. So yeah, in that sense, I think there is a chunk of the public that basically voted for authoritarian power taking. And I think that's the plan and what we're seeing effectuated here, which it doesn't, it's entirely consistent with what he was saying and with the way he wanted to operate in the first term. And the other thing is, and then you can respond if you want. We'll move on because we've been talking about this for a while. But you also see a number of previously bastions of quote unquote resistance that have really, out of fear or necessity or whatever, have really capitulated to Trump. So even before the election, you saw Bezos being Washington Post, we're not going to do an endorsement. You saw Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, Tim Cook, Tim Apple as Trump calls him, all of them calling Trump, hey, big guy, just calling to check in. Really excited for the next administration, trying to make nice with him. Because they know that the way that he was going to get his loyals in place and he was going to use the federal government to, go after, whether it's like Amazon, which has tons of government contracts, or crack down on Facebook for any sort of like political speech on there that he doesn't like, et cetera, like the powers of the federal government are vast and he's not afraid to weaponize them. So there was a lot of already capitulation to that. And then one funny and annoying indicator of this as well, you had Morning Joe and Mika.
Yes, we're going to cover it tomorrow. I think we have to.
But just to tease it for now, Joe and Mika making the trek down to Mar-a-Lago to bend the knee and kiss the ring. And Steve Bannon is out there saying, hey, he literally said Matt Gaetz is going to prosecute MSNBC host. Like Ari Melber, he named specifically.
Don't get my hopes.
So you think Joe and Mika are thinking like, hey, maybe we need to get on the other side of this just to be sure and hedge our bets. So I also think that some of the previous bastions of resistance in 2016, we already know are not going to be there this time around as well. And, I think the courts could also be part of that.
It's certainly possible. I would see, the thing is that this time around, the grounds for resistance are just not there. Trump is not a one-off. He's the democratically elected, twice elected
Well, there's
president.
always grounds for resistance.
No, but I'm saying like the Russiagate shock, the lack of the popular vote, all that stuff last time around is gone. And I mean, it should be gone. Trump has been literally elected with the popular vote with a mandate to govern, not for the first time for Republicans since 2004. So you have to adjust your priors, just like dramatically.
And a lot of liberals have the view, basically, that you express, Saagar, of like, hey, you people voted for this, you're going to get what you deserve, is the attitude. It's not I think
I would
that's
reframe it, not deserve.
I think that's outrageous, but that is what, there's like Latinos, you voted for mass deportation, like, okay, now this is what Joy Reid said, like now you're responsible for your mixed status family getting deported. Like, okay, Muslim Americans, you voted for Trump, like enjoy as your family members are slaughtered in Gaza and the West Bank is, permanently annexed, et cetera, et cetera. I think that that's personally from the liberal perspective. I know you come at this from a different angle.
I'm not
but from the
saying
liberal perspective, I think that is disgusting. To just like, okay, you deserve what you get, et cetera, et cetera. But that's part of the capitulation to this view is like, we're not going to fight it. Like, enjoy your new Muslim ban, enjoy your mass deportation. If you all voted for this, you get what you deserve.
Yeah, well, and mine is more of an affirmation. I'm like, look, I think they actually want it, and I think they should get it. And I also think that people for so long have been wondering, like, what's it like to actually blow stuff up? And it's like, let's find out. Let's see what happens. It's not like the current system is working all that well. And look, here's the craziest and most dangerous thing. What if it works? What if America likes it? I mean, you were talking about our authoritarian tendencies. I wouldn't put it that way. I think people like a strong executive. People have wanted that for a long time. America does like a monarch in name, but only. They liked it under FDR. They liked it under LBJ. They liked it under Nixon. The crazy thing in America is we just get to change, who our immensely powerful person is. And I think people genuinely do, want to see like a serious version of what they actually voted for in practice. The other side of this, and I could be totally wrong too, is that there are all these swing voters out there who believe in like checks and balances, right? Like, I want a Democratic senator and we'll have a Republican president. I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid if you ask me, because it's like that means that you're just going to get nothing done and you're actually voting for the status quo. But, you do what you want. So I do think, though, that there are a large percentage of people, dramatic percentages, of people who did swing, especially in these swing coalitions, who voted for Donald Trump, who want to like light the match and put it on the fire and just see what happens. And so in this respect, like this, you may call it authoritarian. I think he's like the vehicle. I mean, what did he say in his 2016 inauguration? I'm forgetting the exact. I am your retribution, right? I am your retribution. I think that's a real reason why a lot of people voted for Trump, and how it will manifest itself. I mean, that's still a big and an open question. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.